poor mum takes her daughter to a diner with only $20, but a young billionaire sees everything and does something unexpected. The midday sun beat down hard on the windows of the small diner as Clara pushed open the glass door, holding tightly to Sophia's little hand. The place was busy, but not in a fancy way. It was the kind of hustle and bustle of working-class folks looking for an honest meal at a fair price. Sophia asked, swinging her blonde curls as she looked at the menu board on the wall, "Mommy, can I pick whatever I want today?" Clara smiled, but discreetly checked her wallet. $20. It was literally all she had until the end of the week. She needed to make it last for at least 2 more meals. She replied, "Of course, sweetie. Let's see what they have that's good." They sat at a small table near the window. Sophia swung her little legs, excited, studying every item on the laminated menu. Clara pretended to read along, but her eyes darted straight to the prices. $8 for a simple pasta, $10 for one with a special sauce, $12 for a personal pizza. Across the diner, at a corner table, a young man with dark hair was watching the activity around him. Ethan had come here by chance, escaping yet another tedious business lunch. It wasn't the kind of place he usually frequented, but there was something comforting about the simple atmosphere. He first noticed the little girl's golden hair, which shone in the sunlight. The child seemed focused, pointing at something on the menu and talking excitedly with her blonde mother. The waitress approached their table, a middle-aged woman with a tired but sincere smile. She asked, "What can I get for you, dears?" Sophia studied the menu for a few more seconds, biting her lip in concentration. Her little eyes scanned every option until they stopped at the most expensive section. Finally, they lit up when she found what she was looking for. She said, pointing enthusiastically at the most eye-catching item on the menu, "I want to eat this, Mommy. The special spaghetti with meatballs and cheese. Look how yummy it looks." Clara followed her daughter's finger and felt her blood run cold. $22. $2 more than the $20 she had in her wallet. And that was just for one dish, not even considering her own yet. Her eyes quickly scanned the other prices, doing desperate mental calculations. Even the cheapest dish cost $8. If Sophia ate what she wanted, there would be nothing left for her, and she would still be $2 short, $2 she simply didn't have. Clara began, trying to keep her voice calm, as she felt embarrassment creep up her neck. "I'm sorry, sweetie, but we don't have that much money." The words came out louder than she intended, echoing through the diner. $20 in her wallet, $22 for the dish. A simple and cruel math problem. Sophia said, "But Mommy, you said I could choose." Clara glanced quickly at the menu. "I know, honey, but that dish costs $22, and Mommy only has $20. Do you understand?" Sophia frowned, trying to process the numbers that didn't yet make much sense to her. Across the room, Ethan had stopped eating. The words reached him with painful clarity. "Only have $20, $22. We don't have that much money." The specificity of the amounts made it all the more real, more concrete. This wasn't some vaguely struggling family. It was a mother with exactly $20 trying to feed her daughter. Memories flooded his mind. How many times had his own mother done the same desperate mental math? How many times had he heard about having only a small amount and needing just a little more? Clara continued, pointing to the cheaper options. "We can choose something simpler. Love. The pasta with tomato sauce is $8. We can order one and share it. What do you think?" Sophia looked at the dish she wanted, then at the simpler alternative. The difference was stark. One had juicy meatballs, melted cheese, and came with bread. The other was just pasta with a basic sauce. She murmured, the disappointment evident in her voice. "Oh, it's okay, Mommy." The child's resignation hit Ethan like a gut punch. $8 versus $22. $20 in her pocket. 2 people sharing an $8 dish because they couldn't afford more. He knew this cruel math. He knew the quiet humiliation of wanting something, and finding out it was exactly $2 out of reach. But now he could change that equation. Without a second thought, he stood up and walked over to their table. The waitress was still waiting for the final order. He said politely, making Clara and Sophia look up in surprise. "Excuse me. Sorry to interrupt." Clara frowned, confused and a little embarrassed at having been overheard discussing money. She asked, "Yes," Ethan addressed the waitress with a gentle smile. "Could you please put down 2 orders of the special spaghetti with meatballs and cheese for this table?" Clara immediately protested, her face turning red. "No, we didn't order that. We're just going to have a simple pasta." Ethan said calmly, "I know you didn't order it. I'm ordering it. For both of you." Sophia's eyes widened, looking from her mother to Ethan. Clara insisted, mortified, "Sir, that's really not necessary. We can pay for our food. I have my $20 right here." Ethan replied gently, "I'm sure you can pay for the simple pasta, but I heard you wanted the special dish. And I would very much like to pay for it." Clara studied him, looking for signs of pity or condescension, but found only sincere understanding. She asked, "But why? You don't even know us." Ethan crouched down to be at Sophia's eye level, "Because I know exactly what it's like to want something that costs $22 when you only have 20. The specificity of the numbers hit Clara like a bolt of lightning. He had heard everything. He knew exactly that she had only $20. Sophia asked without any embarrassment, "What's your name?" He replied, "Ethan. And you?" She answered, "Sophia. And this is my mommy, Clara." He smiled, "It's very nice to meet you, Sophia." Clara, "So, can I order the special dishes for you?" Clara felt her eyes well up. Someone had overheard her most private struggle, having only $20, and instead of judging her, wanted to help. She said, I don't know what to say." Sophia whispered urgently, "Say yes, Mommy. Please. I wanted that dish so much." Clara looked at her daughter, then at Ethan. There was a genuine kindness in his gesture. She agreed quietly, "All right. But this is very generous," Ethan said, turning to the waitress. $44 for 2 dishes is nothing compared to your joy. 2 special spaghettis with meatballs and cheese, please. On my tab." Clara quickly did the math. $44, more than double the $20 she had. The waitress smiled, clearly moved. She said, "Of course, dear." What a lovely gesture. Ethan went back to his table, and Sophia was beaming, talking about how delicious the meatballs were going to be. Clara was still processing what had happened, from having only $20 to being about to eat a $22 meal. When the dishes arrived, Sophia clapped her hands. She said, "Mummy, look, they're huge." Clara looked for Ethan with her eyes. He nodded and she nodded back, feeling immense gratitude. During the meal, Clara couldn't stop thinking, $44, more than twice the $20 she had for the whole week. When they finished, they went to thank him. Clara said, "I wanted to thank you from the bottom of my heart." "You have no idea what this meant to us." Sophia added, "Me too, it was delicious." Clara asked, "Why did you do it? $44 for 2 strangers." Ethan said sincerely, "Because I remember what it's like to have $20 and need 22. And because $2 shouldn't be the difference between a happy child and a sad one." The honesty touched Clara deeply. Sophia asked, "Do you come here often?" He replied, "I'm going to start coming more. This place has a special energy." He looked at Clara, who felt something new in her chest. She said, "Then maybe we'll see you again." He replied, "I'd love that." They said their goodbyes, and Clara left thinking, $44 spent on 2 strangers. What kind of person did that? For the first time in a long time, she had hope of finding out. Night had fallen when Ethan arrived at his modern apartment. The place was spacious, with a view of downtown, but that night everything felt empty. As he looked out the window, his mind couldn't leave the diner. Sophia's smile when she saw the meatballs, her blue eyes shining with joy. $44 that were nothing to him, but for them had been the difference between sadness and happiness. Ethan sat on the sofa and closed his eyes. The memories came as they always did, without asking for permission. He was 6 years old when it first happened. His mother, Sarah, had taken him to a diner after a difficult doctor's appointment. She had said, forcing a tired smile. "You can pick whatever you want, sweetie." Ethan remembered perfectly how his eyes lit up when he saw the combo with a burger, fries, and a milkshake. He said, "I want that one, Mum." But when Sarah looked at the price, the smile vanished from her face. She said, "Actually, sweetie, how about just a plain burger?" Ethan didn't understand at the time. He only saw the way his mother fumbled in her purse, discreetly counted her coins, and then placed the cheapest order on the menu. They shared that small burger, and Sarah pretended she wasn't hungry. Other memories began to surface. His 8th birthday, when he asked for a bicycle and Sarah explained that bicycles were very expensive. The next year never came. The second-hand clothes she bought, always explaining that they were a special. The nights she stayed up at the kitchen table, surrounded by bills, trying to work miracles with numbers that didn't add up. But the memory that hurt the most was from the Christmas when he was 9. Ethan had asked for a video game console that all the boys at school had. Sarah promised that Santa would try. On Christmas morning, there was a present in the exact shape of a video game console. But when he opened it, he found books, 3 used books she had bought at a second-hand bookstore. Ethan tried to hide his disappointment, but Sarah saw it. She ran to her room where she cried softly. That night, he found her in the kitchen, looking at a flyer for the video game console that cost $120. She whispered, "I'm sorry, my love." "Mommy tried, but—" He lied, hugging her. "I loved the books." Years later, when he got his first job, the first thing he did was buy that video game console. But when he got home, he just put it in the closet. It didn't matter anymore. Now, in his expensive apartment, Ethan understood perfectly what Clara had felt. The humiliation of not being able to give her daughter something so simple, the cruel math of having $20 when you needed 22. Sophia's smile was exactly the smile he had dreamed of giving his mother all those years ago, the pure joy of a child who got what she wanted. Across town, Clara was in the small room she shared with Sophia, watching her daughter sleep. The little girl had talked about Ethan all the way home. Sophia had said, "Mommy, it was like magic, wasn't it? The man appeared and suddenly I could eat what I wanted." Clara smiled, but inside she was confused. She didn't believe in magic. She believed in hard work, in fighting for every penny. But what had happened didn't fit into her worldview. $44. A stranger had spent that without expecting anything in return, without asking questions about why she only had $20, without judging, just kindness. Clara couldn't remember the last time she had experienced genuine kindness. In recent years, she had mostly encountered indifference, sometimes poorly disguised pity. The world had become a place where everyone looked out for themselves, but Ethan had proven that different people still existed. People who saw a sad child and did something about it. People who understood that $2 extra can mean the difference between hope and despair. She thought about the way he looked at Sophia, not with pity, but with an understanding that seemed to come from personal experience. There was something in his eyes that suggested he knew exactly what it was like to be on the other side of the situation. Clara lay down on the narrow bed, listening to Sophia's soft breathing. For the first time in a long time, she went to sleep with a strange feeling. Gratitude mixed with curiosity. Who was Ethan? Why had he done that? And why couldn't she stop thinking about his gentle smile? Sophia stirred in her sleep and murmured something about meatballs, a smile on her face. Clara kissed her on the forehead and closed her eyes, allowing herself, for the first time in years, to feel a little bit of hope. Maybe there were still good people in the world, people who made a difference without expecting recognition, people who proved that kindness hadn't died. On opposite sides of the city, 2 people fell asleep thinking of each other, not knowing that their meeting had planted a seed that would change their lives forever. 3 days had passed since the encounter at the diner, and Clara was walking through the busy downtown streets with a folder under her arm and Sophia by her side. It was Monday morning, and she had a clear mission: find a job. Any job that could pay the bills and provide stability for the 2 of them. Sophia skipped beside her, curious about the bustling crowds, but Clara was completely focused. She had already visited 4 places that morning: a clothing store, a pharmacy, a small market, and a diner. At each one, the response had been frustrating. "We're not hiring right now. We'll keep your resume on file, or you can leave your information, but we don't have an opening date." With every "no," Clara felt a heavier weight in her chest, but she forced herself to maintain an upright posture and a polite smile. Sophia didn't need to see the desperation that grew with each closed door. Sophia asked, pointing to a nearby public fountain, clearly tired from the walking, "Mommy, can I get some water?" Clara replied, "Of course, sweetie. Rest for a little bit." While Sophia drank water, Clara reorganized the resumes in her folder. They were simple copies, printed at a cheap neighborhood print shop, but she had taken care with the presentation. She had listed all her experience: 5 years as a receptionist at a doctor's office, 2 years as a sales associate, basic computer skills. It wasn't very impressive, but it was honest. Sophia asked, wiping her mouth with her sleeve, "Mommy, are there more places for us to go?" Clara replied, "Yes, sweetie. Let's try that gift shop over there, and then the bakery that's 2 blocks from here." Clara was about to get up when she heard a familiar voice that made her heart race. A voice called out, "Clara!" She turned her head and felt a mix of surprise and nervousness. It was Ethan walking toward them with a genuinely surprised smile on his face. He was wearing casual clothes, dark jeans, and a light blue shirt, but even so, there was something about him that naturally drew attention. Maybe it was his confident posture, or the way he smiled. Sophia shouted before Clara could respond, running to him. "Ethan, hi, it's so cool to see you again," he said, crouching to her level. "Hi, princess. How are you? And how are the meatballs? Still thinking about them?" Sophia laughed, shaking her blonde curls. She replied, "They're still in my tummy. Mommy said they were the best of my life." Ethan laughed too, then stood up and looked at Clara. "That's great. And you, Clara? How are you?" She replied, feeling her face get warm. "I'm fine, thank you." There was something about the way he looked at her that made her feel seen. Sophia announced with the frankness of children, making Clara feel exposed, "We're looking for a job for Mommy." Clara started to say, "Sophia," but Ethan showed genuine interest. He asked without any judgment, "Looking for a job? What kind of work do you do, Clara?" Clara hesitated. She wasn't used to talking about her situation with people she barely knew, especially with someone who had already witnessed her financial struggles. She replied honestly, "Anything, really. I have experience in customer service, sales, reception. I'm open to opportunities. I need to work." Ethan noticed the folder in her hands, her determined posture, her resolute expression. There was something admirable in the way Clara faced her difficulties, without self-pity, just quiet determination. He asked suddenly, "Do you have time for a coffee? I was just going to grab one, and it would be great to have company." "Both of you?" Clara looked at Sophia, then at him, feeling torn. Part of her wanted to accept, as there was something about Ethan that sparked her curiosity, but another part hesitated, worried about seeming needy. She said, "I don't want to get in the way of your plans." Ethan assured her sincerely, "You won't get in the way of anything. In fact, you two would make my day much better." Sophia tugged on Clara's sleeve, her little eyes shining. She asked, "Can I have a hot chocolate, Mommy? Please?" Her daughter's question, combined with Ethan's hopeful expression, settled the matter. She agreed with a small smile. "All right, a quick coffee." They walked to a cozy coffee shop that Ethan knew. The place was simple but inviting, with wooden tables and a comforting aroma of fresh coffee in the air. Ethan chose a table near the window where Sophia could watch the street activity. He asked, picking up the menu. "What will you have?" Clara said quickly. "Just a coffee for me," Sophia added excitedly. "And I want a hot chocolate," Ethan suggested. "And how about something to eat? Maybe a sandwich? It's past noon, and you must be tired." Clara was about to protest, but Ethan gently raised his hand. He said, "Please, Clara, let me do this. For it's not charity, it's just a courtesy between friends." The word friends caught her by surprise. It had been a long time since someone had referred to her that way. When the waiter came, Ethan ordered coffee for himself and Clara, hot chocolate for Sophia, and 3 sandwiches to share. Clara didn't protest this time. Ethan began once they were alone. "So how is the job search going?" Clara stirred her coffee, thinking about how to answer. She admitted, "It's tough. It seems like everyone is fully staffed, or they're looking for people with specific experience that I don't have." He asked, "What kind of job would you like to do if you could choose?" The question surprised her. No one had asked what she would like to do in years. They always asked what she knew how to do, or what she was willing to do. She began slowly. I've always liked dealing with people. I like customer service, helping others find what they need. When I worked at the doctor's office reception, I liked calming down nervous patients, making them feel welcome. I made a point of remembering their names, asking about their families. Ethan listened with real attention, asking questions that showed genuine interest. Clara found herself talking about things she hadn't mentioned in years, her small dreams, her frustrations, her hopes. She eventually asked, "And you? What do you do for a living?" He replied simply, "I work in investments. I help people make smart choices with their money. It's not the most exciting, but it pays the bills and allows me to do things like buy lunch for special people." Clara suspected he was being modest, from the way he dressed, the discreet but expensive watch, the natural confidence. Ethan was definitely not just a paying the bills. Sophia, who had been quietly sipping her hot chocolate, suddenly turned to Ethan. She asked directly, making Clara almost choke. "Are you rich?" Clara exclaimed, mortified. "Sophia?" Ethan laughed, finding it amusing rather than offensive. He asked, "Why do you want to know, Sophia?" She replied, "Because you bought our food at the diner even without knowing us, and now you're buying it again, and your clothes are nice. Only people who have a lot of money do that." Clara wanted to hide, but Ethan seemed amused. He said honestly, "You're very smart, Sophia. You're right. Yes, I have enough money to help when I want to, but you know what I've discovered? Having money doesn't mean much if you don't have special people to share the good things with." Sophia asked innocently, "Like us?" He confirmed, looking at Clara, "Exactly like you." There was a moment of comfortable silence. Clara felt something strange, a sense of normalcy that she hadn't experienced in a long time, as if it were possible to forget her worries and just exist. Clara said suddenly, "Can I ask you a personal question?" He replied, "Of course." She asked, "Why did you really do that at the diner? The real truth." Ethan was silent for a moment, stirring his coffee. When he spoke, his voice had a different quality, more vulnerable. He said simply, "Because I was once Sophia. I was once the child who wanted something simple and couldn't have it. I've seen my mother count coins and try to explain why we couldn't buy what I wanted." Clara felt her chest tighten. He continued, "My mother was on her own, just like you. She worked 2, sometimes 3 jobs, did everything to give me the best she could. But sometimes it wasn't enough. And I saw how she suffered, how she blamed herself for every little thing she couldn't give me." Clara asked softly, "What happened to her?" Ethan smiled, but there was emotion in his eyes. "She's doing well now. Lives in a house I bought for her. No longer has to worry about money. But I never forgot that time. I never forgot what it's like to want to give something to someone you love and not be able to." Sophia had stopped moving and was listening seriously. Ethan shook his head. "When I saw Sophia asking for that dish and you explaining that you didn't have the extra $2, it was like going back in time. But this time I could do something different. This time I could be the person I wish had appeared for me and my mother." Clara felt tears in her eyes. There was a sincerity in his voice that touched her deeply. She said quietly, "You have a very generous heart." Ethan replied, "It's not generosity, it's humanity. It's doing for others what I wish had been done for me and my mother." Sophia suddenly got up and walked around the table to hug Ethan. She said, squeezing him tightly, "You're very nice, and your mummy must be very proud of you." Ethan was moved by the spontaneous hug. returning it affectionately. He said, "Thank you, Princess." "That means a lot." Clara started, "Sophia." But Ethan shook his head. He said, "It's okay. Actually, I should be thanking you. You two reminded me of something important." Clara asked. "Of what?" He replied, "That sometimes the best things in life happen when we least expect them." They talked for over an hour. Ethan asked about Clara's life, about Sophia, about the dreams she had tucked away. Clara found herself talking about ambitions she hadn't mentioned in years, feeling truly heard for the first time in a long time. When they finally prepared to leave, Ethan hesitated. He said, "Clara, I'd like to ask a question, but I don't want you to feel pressured," she replied. "You can ask." He said, "I would really like to help you, not just today, but for real. I know you're looking for a job, and maybe I can help with that. I have some contacts. I know people." Clara was silent, processing the offer. He continued, "But beyond that, I'd like to get to know you better too. Would it be possible? Could I visit you sometime? Maybe bring something for dinner, or just talk? You make me feel whole," Clara asked, genuinely curious. "Why? You barely know us." He answered honestly, "Because in 3 days, you've made me feel something I haven't felt in years. Sophia reminds me that there's still pure joy in the world. And you inspire me with your strength, your determination." Clara looked at Sophia, who was hopeful. She asked, "Can he come to our house, Mommy? Please, he's our friend." Clara took a deep breath. Part of her hesitated, as she wasn't used to trusting people. But there was something about Ethan that seemed genuinely safe. She finally said, "All right, you can visit us, but our apartment is very simple." Sophia shouted, jumping, "Really?" Ethan assured her, "I don't care about that. I only care about your company." Clara took a napkin and wrote down the address. She said, "It's in the Oakwood district, at 247 Blossom Street. 3rd floor, apartment 3B, Ethan asked, tucking the paper away like a treasure. "Can I come by tomorrow evening? Maybe bring pizza for dinner?" Clara admitted, Sophia would love pizza. He said, "Then it's a date. What time would be good?" She replied, "At around 7 o'clock," so he confirmed. "Perfect. See you tomorrow then." When they said goodbye, Sophia hugged Ethan one more time. She yelled, waving as they walked away, "See you tomorrow?" Clara looked back and saw Ethan still standing in the same spot, watching them leave with a smile on his face. For the first time in years, she was looking forward to the next day. 2 weeks had passed since that first pizza visit, and what started as an isolated act of kindness had turned into something much bigger. Ethan began visiting Clara and Sophia 3 times a week, always arriving promptly at 7 in the evening, always bringing something special. The first week it was practical dinners, pizza, sandwiches, Chinese food. But soon Ethan realized that what really mattered wasn't expensive food, but presence, attention, shared moments. So he started bringing different things. On that Tuesday night, Sophia had been glued to the window of the small apartment since 6:30 watching every movement on the street. She asked for the 5th time in 10 minutes, "Mommy, what time is it?" Clara replied, smiling as she set the simple living room table. 6:45, sweetie. Ethan will be here soon." Sophia asked, "Do you think he'll bring another book today?" Clara smiled. On his previous visit, Ethan had arrived with a bag full of children's books. They weren't expensive or fancy books, but they were new, colorful, full of stories Sophia had never heard. She had spent the entire evening flipping through each one, asking Clara to read the stories aloud. She replied, "I don't know, honey, but even if he doesn't, he'll be here to talk with us." The apartment had subtly changed in recent weeks. Not physically, as it was still the same small space with simple furniture, but there was a different energy in the air. A good anticipation, a feeling that something special was about to happen. At 7 o'clock sharp, there was a knock on the door. Sophia shot away from the window like a rocket. She yelled, practically jumping with joy, "It's him!" "It's him!" Clara opened the door and found Ethan with his familiar smile, holding a paper bag and what looked like a wrapped box. Sophia shouted, throwing herself into his arms before he could fully step inside, "Hi," Ethan laughed, lifting her up for a tight hug. "Hi, Princess, how was your day?" she replied. "It was good. I drew a house today, just like the one you said your mum lives in. Want to see?" He said, "Of course I want to see, but first, let me say hi to your mum." He turned to Clara, who was watching the scene with a smile on her face. He asked, "Hi, Clara. How are you?" She replied, "Good. And you?" "How was work?" he replied, and there was a sincerity in his tone that made her heart beat a little faster. "Better now." They settled in the small living room, Sophia immediately clinging to Ethan's side, curious about what he had brought. She asked, trying to peek, "What's in the bag?" Ethan laughed. "Patience, little curious one. First, tell me about this drawing of the house." Sophia ran to her room and came back with a paper full of bright colors. It was clearly a child's drawing, a house with square windows, a rectangular door, disproportionate flowers in the garden, and a huge yellow sun in the corner. She said proudly, "Look. It has a garden, it has flowers, it even has a tree to climb." Ethan took the drawing carefully, studying every detail as if it were a work of art. He said, "Sophia, this is incredible. Your mum must be so proud. You have so much talent." She asked, "Do you really think so?" He looked at Clara, then back at Sophia. "I'm sure of it. In fact, can I take this drawing with me? I want to put it in my office." Sophia's little eyes shone. She asked, "You can. But why?" He replied, "Because every time I look at it, I'll remember you two, and that will make my day better." Clara felt something stir in her chest. It had been months since anyone had valued something Sophia had made. The last drawing she had brought home from school had ended up on the fridge for a few days before being forgotten. Sophia asked, turning her attention back to the bag, "Now can I see what you brought?" He replied, "You sure can." Ethan opened the bag and first took out a container with food. He announced, "I cooked today. Nothing too fancy, but I made pasta with homemade sauce and meatballs. I thought Sophia would like it, since it was meatballs that brought us together." Sophia clapped her hands. She asked, "Meatballs, just like at the diner?" He replied, "I hope so. I tried to make them similar." Then he picked up the wrapped box. He said, "And this is for you, Sophia." She widened her eyes. "For me?" He replied, "Open it and see." With the typical excitement of children, Sophia tore the paper. Inside was a box of colored pencils, but it wasn't an ordinary box. There were 48 different colors, including shades she had never seen before. She whispered, touching the box as if it were something magical. "Wow, there are so many colors." Ethan explained, "I thought you could use them to make more drawings, maybe paint more houses, or flowers, or whatever comes to your imagination." Sophia looked at Clara, asking for silent permission. Clara said, moved, "You can accept it, sweetie." "Remember to say thank you." Sophia threw herself into his arms again. "Thank you, Ethan. You're the best friend in the world." The word friend echoed in the small room. That's what Ethan had become to them. Not a distant savior, not someone doing charity, but a genuine friend. During dinner, they talked about everything and nothing. Ethan asked about Sophia's day, about her games at the nearby park, about the cartoons she liked to watch. He listened to every answer as if they were the most important things in the world. He asked while Sophia played with her new pencils, "And you, Clara, how are the job interviews this week?" Clara sighed. She replied, "Not great. I went to 2 places, but still nothing concrete." He asked, "Any specific feedback?" She replied, "The usual. They want people with more experience, or with more flexible hours, or who live closer." Ethan nodded, thoughtful. He said, "You know I can help with that, right? I have some contacts who are really looking for good people." Clara said, "I know, and I appreciate it. But I want to try to get it on my own first. I need to feel like I deserve the opportunity." Ethan said simply, "You always deserve any opportunity. But I understand. Just know that whenever you want, I can open some doors." After dinner, while Clara was washing the dishes, Ethan sat on the living room floor with Sophia. She had spread the new pencils around and was trying out each color on separate sheets of paper. She said suddenly, without looking up from her drawing, "Ethan," he replied. "Yes?" she asked. "Are you going to keep coming here?" The question caught him by surprise. He asked, "Well, why are you asking that?" She replied, "Because I like it when you come. And sometimes, when people are nice to me, they go away after a while." Ethan felt his chest tighten. There was a sadness in Sophia's voice that didn't belong to a 5-year-old child. He said, "Sophia, look at me." She looked up with her blue eyes. He promised, "I will keep coming here as long as you and your mom want me to." "I promise," she asked. "Really?" he replied. "Really, you two are very important to me now." Sophia smiled, returning to her drawing, but a few minutes later she spoke again. She said, "Ethan?" He replied, "Yes, princess." She asked, "Can you be like a borrowed dad?" The question hit Ethan like a thunderbolt. Clara, who was finishing up the dishes, stopped what she was doing. Clara asked gently, "What do you mean, Sophia?" She looked at him seriously. "It's just that the other kids at the park have dads who play with them, and Ethan plays with me, brings me presents, listens to my stories. Can't you be my borrowed dad? Just sometimes." Ethan blinked several times, clearly moved. He began, his voice thick with emotion. "Sophia, it would be a great honor to be your borrowed dad." She asked, "Really?" He replied, "Really. But you'll have to teach me how to be a good borrowed dad, Tan, because I've never been one." Sophia said excitedly, "It's easy. You just have to keep doing what you're doing. Play with me, bring cool things, and be happy when I tell you about my day." Ethan laughed, his eyes teary. "I think I can do that." Clara watched the scene from the kitchen, feeling a mix of joy and fear. Joy because it had been a long time since she had seen Sophia so happy and secure. Fear because, what if one day Ethan decided he had done enough? What if he got tired of them? As if reading her thoughts, Ethan looked at her. He asked, "Clara, are you okay?" She lied, forcing a smile. "I'm fine." Later, after Sophia had gone to sleep, cuddling one of the books Ethan had brought the week before, they talked in the living room. Clara said quietly, "She adores you." Ethan replied, "The feeling is mutual. She's an incredible child. Clara, smart, affectionate, creative." Clara suddenly admitted, "Sometimes I'm scared." He asked, "Of what?" She replied, "That she'll get used to this. To you coming here, bringing good things, being present. And what if one day you get tired of it? What if you decide you've helped enough?" Ethan leaned forward, looking directly into her eyes. He said, "Clara, I'm not going to get tired. This isn't charity for me. You two are important." Clara repeated quietly, "Important," he said honestly. "That's how I feel when I'm here. For the first time in a long time, I have a place where I'm truly welcome. Where I'm expected, where I'm important not for what I can give, but for who I am." Clara felt her eyes well up. She said, "You've become important to us too." Ethan said gently, "Then there's no reason to be afraid. I'll keep coming. I promise." When Ethan left that night, Clara stood at the window watching him walk away. For the first time in years, she didn't feel alone in the world. There was someone who cared, someone who showed up, someone who kept promises. In her room, Sophia slept with a smile on her face, the colored pencils neatly arranged on the table beside her bed, ready for new drawings the next day. A true bond had formed between the three of them. Not based on pity or obligation, but on genuine affection, mutual respect, and the simple joy of having people who care. It was the beginning of something special, a true friendship that was growing with every visit. It was a rainy Thursday when Ethan parked his car on Blossom Street, as he had done so many times in recent weeks. It had become part of his routine. Leave work, stop by the bakery to buy something tasty for Sophia, and head to apartment 3B, where he knew he would be greeted with smiles and warm hugs. But this time, something was completely different. Still inside the car, Ethan frowned as he saw a small cluster of people on the sidewalk in front of the building. There were boxes scattered about, furniture covered with plastic tarps because of the light rain, and a strange commotion that made no sense at that time of day. He got out of the car and walked closer, and that's when he saw it. Clara was sitting on an old wooden chair, Sophia nestled in her lap, both of them damp from the persistent drizzle. Around them, piled haphazardly on the sidewalk, were all their belongings: the small living room table, 2 simple single beds, clothes in makeshift plastic bags, the books Ethan had given Sophia, the drawings she made with the colored pencils, kitchen utensils in cardboard boxes already soaked through. The shock hit Ethan like a punch to the gut, knocking the wind out of him. He called out, running toward them, his heart pounding. "Hi, Clara!" Hearing his familiar voice, Sophia lifted her head. Her little blue eyes were red, and not just from the light rain falling. She cried out, jumping from her mother's lap and running to him with her arms wide open. "Ethan!" He scooped her up immediately, feeling how cold and shivery she was under the thin little jacket she wore. He asked, looking directly at Clara, concern evident in his voice, "What happened here?" Clara stood up slowly from the chair, trying to maintain her dignity even in the completely humiliating situation. Her blonde hair was wet and stuck to her pale face, and she wore a thin coat that clearly wasn't enough against the damp cold of the afternoon. She said simply, her voice controlled but with an almost imperceptible tremor she couldn't hide, "We've been evicted," Ethan asked, still trying to process the surreal scene before him. "What do you mean? Why?" Clara took a deep breath before answering, gathering the courage to admit the truth. She said, "I was behind on the rent. 3 months. The landlord lost his patience and said he couldn't wait any longer." Ethan looked around again, fully processing the scene, all the belongings of an entire life scattered on the street, getting wet in the rain. A 5-year-old child without a roof over her head, a hard-working mother trying to keep her composure in the face of absolute despair. Some neighbors watched discreetly from their windows, others hurried past on the sidewalk, averting their gaze from the embarrassing situation. One man stopped for a moment, seeming to consider offering help, but ended up going on his way. Ethan asked, but there was no accusation in his voice, only genuine concern and a touch of frustration with himself for not having noticed. "Why didn't you tell me you were having trouble paying the rent?" Clara replied, looking at the wet ground. "Because I didn't want you to think I was taking advantage of your generosity. You've already done so much for us." "More than anyone has ever done." Ethan started Clara, but she cut him off, raising her hand. She said, "It's not your responsibility to take care of us, Ethan. We are eternally grateful for everything you've already done, but I need to solve our problems on my own. I need to prove that I can do it." Sophia, still in Ethan's arms, looked at her mother with worry on her little face. She asked, "Mommy, where are we going to sleep tonight? Is it going to be on the street?" The innocent and direct question shattered the last barrier of composure Clara was desperately trying to maintain. She closed her eyes for a moment, fighting back the tears that threatened to overflow. She said, but the uncertainty and fear were evident in her choked voice, "We'll figure something out, sweetie." Ethan didn't hesitate for a second. He said, as if it were the most natural and obvious thing in the world, "You're going to stay at my house." Clara immediately replied, shaking her head, "No, we can't. You've already done too much. I can't accept that." Ethan said gently, but with unshakable firmness, "Clara, it's raining. Sophia is cold and wet. You have nowhere to go tonight. This isn't a favor. It's not charity. It's simply what any friend would do for another friend in trouble." She said, "But," Sophia whispered, looking from her mother to Ethan with pleading little eyes, "Please, I'm so cold, Mommy. And I'm scared." Clara looked at her daughter, saw her purple lips from the cold, her soaked little jacket, the trembling in her small body, and felt her pride completely shatter in the face of the raw reality of the situation. She finally said, her voice almost a whisper, "Just for tonight. Tomorrow morning, we'll figure something else out." Ethan quickly agreed, knowing he would discuss it later. Of course. Let's get your things in my car before they get any wetter. The operation of loading their belongings was quick, but deeply distressing. Ethan saw with painful clarity how little they owned. Basic but well cared for clothes, a few simple toys of Sophia's, old books with yellowed pages, furniture that had seen much better days. Everything fit easily into his car and that of a kind neighbor who offered to help with the transport. Clara said to the neighbor, who just nodded with an understanding smile before leaving, "Thank you." During the drive to Ethan's house, Sophia fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from the emotional stress of the day. Clara sat in complete silence, looking out the wet window, clearly struggling with conflicting feelings of deep gratitude and painful humiliation. Ethan said softly as he drove through the familiar streets, "Clara." She replied, He said, "You don't have to feel bad about this. These things happen to everyone at some point in their lives." She replied with evident bitterness, "They don't happen to everyone. Normal people, responsible people, don't let their children get evicted onto the street like homeless people." Ethan corrected her patiently. "Normal people sometimes go through unexpected financial difficulties, especially single mothers trying to raise a daughter alone without any support. You're doing the best you can in very difficult circumstances." Clara didn't answer, but Ethan saw a tear silently stream down her face, reflecting the streetlights. When they arrived at Ethan's house, Clara was silent for a long moment, observing the property through the rain-streaked windshield. It was a large house, not exactly an ostentatious mansion, but definitely much bigger and more elegant than any place she had ever lived. It had a well-tended garden with trimmed plants, a spacious two-car garage, and a discreet elegance that spoke of established financial comfort. Sophia asked, waking up and rubbing her sleepy eyes. "Is this where you live?" Ethan replied, watching their reaction. "It is. What do you think?" Sophia observed with the typical honesty of children, impressed. "It's very big," Ethan admitted. "It is big, and very, very quiet." "Maybe you can help change that." He opened the front door and switched on the lights, revealing the interior. The house was truly beautiful, with quality furniture and sophisticated but sober decor. But there was something curiously sterile about it. It looked more like a magazine showroom than a home where someone actually lived. Sophia whispered, impressed by the high ceiling of the living room and the elegant furniture. "Wow," Ethan said, watching their reactions. "Make yourselves completely at home." "Sophia, want to see where you'll sleep?" she asked, her excitement starting to overcome the fatigue and shock of the day. "Can I?" Ethan led them down the wide hallway to a spacious guest room with a comfortable double bed, built-in closets, and its own bathroom with a bathtub. He said, opening the curtains to show the garden view, "You two can stay here. There's plenty of space, and the bathroom is all yours." Clara looked around the room, which was considerably larger than the entire living room of the apartment where they had lived until that morning. She said, "Ethan, this is too much. It's too luxurious for us," he said quickly, trying to downplay the situation. "It's temporary. Just until you get back on your feet and find a new place." But even as he said it, Ethan secretly hoped it wouldn't be so temporary. In the following hours, while Clara carefully organized their few clothes in the spacious closet, and Sophia cautiously explored the new house, Ethan prepared a simple dinner in the kitchen. Pasta with tomato sauce and a salad, nothing elaborate or sophisticated, but comforting and familiar. Sophia said during dinner, looking around the spacious kitchen with granite countertops, "The house is very pretty, but it seems kind of empty," Ethan asked, genuinely curious about her observation. "What do you mean empty?" Sophia thought for a moment, searching for the right words to express what she felt. She said, "There are no drawings on the fridge. There are no toys scattered in the corners. There are no pictures on the walls. It doesn't have real life." The innocent observation hit Ethan in a completely unexpected way. Sophia was absolutely right. The house was beautiful, well decorated, but it had no real personality. It had no personal history. It had no love imprinted in its details. He said again, but this time with more meaning, "Maybe you can help change that." After dinner, while Clara was giving Sophia a bath in the luxurious bathroom, Ethan was alone in the living room, looking at the boxes with their belongings neatly stacked in the corner. There was something profoundly wrong and unjust in how the world worked, when genuinely good people like Clara and Sophia could become homeless, while he lived alone in a space he barely used. When Sophia came out of the bath, wearing simple but clean pajamas, she ran barefoot into the living room where Ethan was sitting, thoughtful. She asked, "Ethan, can I show you something special?" He replied, "Of course, princess." She carefully pulled one of the boxes and took out a sheet of paper folded with extreme care. It was one of the drawings she had made with the colored pencils he had given her. She said, handing him the paper with pride, "I made this especially for you." Ethan gently unfolded the drawing. It was a house, not very different from the one Sophia had drawn weeks ago, but this time there were 3 figures drawn in front: a blonde woman and a small girl with curls, and a tall man with dark hair. They were all smiling and holding hands. Sophia explained, pointing to each figure, "This is the 3 of us, in our new happy house." Ethan repeated, his voice slightly choked with emotion. "Our new house?" she said. "Yeah, because now we live together, right? Like a real family." Clara, who had just entered the room drying her hair with a towel, heard her daughter's innocent declaration. She said, "Sophia, it's not quite like that. We're only going to stay here for a little while." Sophia protested with the typical stubbornness of children, "But I really like it here, and Ethan likes us too. Isn't that right, Ethan?" Ethan looked at the touching drawing, then at Sophia, then at Clara. There were so many things he wanted to say, so many feelings he wanted to express, but he knew he had to be careful and respectful. He finally said, choosing his words carefully, "I like you both very much. And you can stay here for as long as you need. No rush at all." Later, after Sophia had fallen peacefully asleep in the large bed of the guest room, Clara and Ethan were talking in the living room, the drawing still on the coffee table. Clara said quietly, looking at her own hands, "Thank you for everything. I know this isn't normal." Ethan asked philosophically, "What is normal? Real friends help friends. It's as simple as that." She replied, "It's not simple. You're literally giving us a roof over our heads, safety, dignity. That's immense." Ethan was silent for a moment, looking at Sophia's drawing still on the coffee table. He finally said, "Can I tell you something very personal?" She replied, "Of course." He confessed, "This house, I bought it 3 years ago. It's beautiful, has everything a person could materially desire, but never, not once, has it felt like a real home. Until today." Clara looked at him, surprised by the confession. He paused, searching for the right words. "Today, for the first time. When I came home and heard Sophia laughing in the hallway, when I smelled kids' shampoo in the bathroom, when I saw her little shoes by the door. For the first time in 3 years, this house felt truly alive." She said, "Ethan," he continued, "so, actually, I'm the one who should be thanking you for reminding me what it truly means to have a home full of real love." Clara felt her eyes well up again, but this time it wasn't just from sadness. She asked, "How do you always manage to say exactly the right thing?" Ethan laughed softly. "I don't. Most of the time I don't know what to say, but with you, it's different. It's natural. It's easy to be completely honest." That night, Clara took a long time to fall asleep. She lay in the comfortable bed, listening to the sounds of the house, the wind in the garden trees, the distant, soft hum of traffic, the quiet breathing of Sophia beside her, and for the first time in many months, she felt genuinely safe. Across the house, Ethan was also wide awake, staring at his bedroom ceiling. He could hear the small, comforting noises of a truly inhabited house, the gentle creak of the floorboards when Clara moved, the whisper of Sophia talking in her sleep, the sounds of real life. They were the most beautiful sounds he had ever heard in his life. For the first time in his 28 years, Ethan Brooks did not feel alone in his own house, and he knew with a certainty that completely surprised him that he didn't want this wonderful feeling to be temporary. The silent house had transformed into a true home, and all because of a brave and determined woman and a 5-year-old girl who drew houses full of unconditional love. 2 weeks had passed since Clara and Sophia moved into Ethan's house, and a comforting routine had settled between them. Sophia would wake up excited every day, running to the kitchen where Ethan was already making breakfast before he left for work. Clara continued her job search during the day, and the evenings became special moments of togetherness. It was a Thursday in autumn when Clara realized that something had definitively changed between her and Ethan. It wasn't just gratitude or friendship. It was a deeper connection that grew with every conversation, every shared glance, every moment of comfortable silence. That afternoon, Sophia had fallen asleep early after a busy day at school, leaving Clara and Ethan alone in the living room. The golden evening light streamed through the large windows, creating a cozy atmosphere that contrasted with the initial formality of the space. Ethan asked, as had become his habit, "Coffee?" Clara replied, settling onto the sofa with her legs tucked under her. "Please." In recent days, these afternoon chats had become the most anticipated part of the day for both of them. It was when they could drop their masks and simply talk as two people who genuinely cared about each other. Ethan returned from the kitchen with 2 steaming cups and sat beside her, maintaining a respectful but close enough distance for them to speak softly without waking Sophia. He asked, handing her the cup, "How was the interview today?" Clara sighed, stirring her coffee slowly. She said, "Come another promise of we'll be in touch. It's always the same. Lack of specific experience, hours that don't fit, qualifications that aren't exactly what they're looking for." Ethan said gently, "That's not about you not being good enough. Sometimes it's just a matter of timing," Clara admitted, looking at the window. "Sometimes I think it's about who I am." Her single mother, no college degree, no impeccable references. I'm not exactly the profile companies are looking for. Ethan watched her profile against the golden late afternoon light. There was a melancholy in her eyes that he recognized well. He said suddenly, "You want to know something?" She asked, "What?" He said, "Sometimes I envy you." Clara turned to him, surprised. She said, "What do you mean? You have everything a person could ever want." Ethan corrected her, "I have money, which isn't the same as having everything." "You have something I've always wanted and could never buy." She asked, "What is it?" He replied, "Purpose. You wake up every day knowing exactly what you're fighting for. You have someone who depends on you, who loves you unconditionally, who makes every sacrifice worth it." Clara was silent, processing his words. Ethan continued, his voice growing softer. "And me. I wake up in an empty house, go to a job that doesn't excite me, earn money I don't need to spend, and come back to a home where no one is waiting for me." She said, "But you have freedom. You can do whatever you want, go wherever you want." Ethan laughed without humor. Freedom for what? To have dinner alone in expensive restaurants? To travel to beautiful places and have no one to share the experiences with? To buy things I don't need just to fill the void? Clara felt something stir in her chest. There was a vulnerability in his voice she had never heard before. He continued, "Loneliness is strange when you have money. People assume you're happy because you can afford anything. But there's no price for genuine companionship, for someone who cares about you without any ulterior motives." She said, "Ethan," he said quickly, "sorry, I don't want to sound like I'm complaining about my privileged life. I know I'm lucky." Clara said softly, "You don't need to apologize. Pain is pain, regardless of the circumstances. And loneliness. I understand loneliness." They were silent for a few moments, drinking coffee and watching the daylight slowly fade. Ethan eventually said, "Can I ask you a personal question?" She replied, "You can." He asked, "How do you do it? How do you manage to be so strong all the time?" Clara chuckled softly, but there was no joy in the sound. She said, "Who says I'm strong? I pretend to be strong for Sophia, but there are nights I lie awake terrified, thinking about what will happen if I can't take care of her properly." He said, "You're an amazing mother, Clara." She looked at him with teary eyes. "Am I really? Does an amazing mother let her daughter get evicted? Does an amazing mother not be able to buy the dish her daughter wants at a restaurant? Does an amazing mother accept charity from strangers? Ethan replied firmly. An amazing mother does all that and more to protect her daughter. An amazing mother swallows her pride when necessary. An amazing mother fights every day against a world that makes nothing easy for those who are alone. Clara felt the tears finally spill over. She said, "Sometimes I'm so afraid I'm failing her." Ethan said, moving a little closer, "Sophia is the happiest, most loving, most confident child I've ever met. That doesn't happen by chance. It happens because she has a mother who loves her more than life itself." She asked, "How can you be so sure?" He replied, "Because I had a mother like that, and I recognized the result." They looked at each other, and Clara felt something shift in the air between them, an intimacy that went beyond friendship, but that neither of them yet knew how to name. Clara said suddenly, "Can I tell you something I've never told anyone?" He replied, "Of course." Clara took a deep breath, gathering her courage. She asked, "Do you want to know the truth about Sophia's father?" Ethan nodded, waiting patiently. She said, "I was a secretary at an accounting firm, small, family-owned. I had been working there for 2 years when the owner's son took over part of the business." Clara paused, nervously fidgeting with her cup. She continued, "He was charismatic, handsome, older than me, successful, and he paid attention to me in a way no one ever had before." Ethan listened in silence, without judgment. She said, "I was naive. I was 22, had never been in a serious relationship. When he started asking me to dinner, giving me gifts, telling me I was special, I believed him." He asked, "What happened?" She replied, "For 6 months, it was like a fairy tale. He made me feel important, desired. He said he loved me, that he was going to leave his wife for me." Clara paused, the pain still evident in her voice. Ethan asked softly, "Wife?" She confirmed, "Yes, he was married. I found out by chance, after 3 months. But when I confronted him, he said the marriage was over, that it was just a matter of time, that he was just waiting for the right moment." He said, "And you believed him?" She replied, "I wanted to believe him. I was in love, or I thought I was. It was the first time I felt special to someone." Clara stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the garden in the twilight. She said, "One day, his wife showed up at the office. She was pregnant, 8 months pregnant." Ethan felt his stomach clench. She continued, "She didn't know about me, of course. She came to bring her husband lunch, all happy, talking about the baby that was about to be born. And I realized I had been a complete idiot." He asked, "What did you do?" She said, "I confronted him the next day. I told him I knew about his wife's pregnancy, that I wasn't going to be the other woman anymore. And do you know what he did?" Ethan waited. She replied, "He fired me, on the spot, said I was being hysterical, that I had misinterpreted the signals, that our friendship was never anything more than that, in front of all my colleagues. He said, 'Clara.'" She continued, her voice growing stronger. But the story didn't end there. 2 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant. The silence that followed was heavy. Ethan processed every word, feeling anger grow in his chest. He asked, "Did you tell him?" She replied, "I tried, I called, I sent messages. He blocked me on everything. When I managed to speak to him in person, he said the child wasn't his, that I was trying to trap him, that if I insisted on it, he would sue me for defamation." Clara turned to Ethan, her eyes shining with unshed tears. She said, "So, I decided I was going to raise Sophia alone, without him, without help, without anything. And that's what I did." He asked, "How did you manage?" She replied, "I worked 3 different jobs during my pregnancy, cleaning offices at night, serving at a diner during the day, babysitting on weekends. I saved every penny I could." He asked, "And after Sophia was born?" She replied, "It was hard, very hard. Daycare was expensive, a nanny was expensive, and I needed to work. Many times I took Sophia with me to jobs that allowed it. Other times, kind neighbors would watch her for a few hours." Clara returned to the sofa, sitting closer to Ethan this time. She said, "The worst part wasn't the lack of money, it was the judgment. People looked at me as if I were irresponsible. As if being a single mother was a moral failing." Ethan muttered, "Idiots." She continued, "At doctor's appointments, school meetings, even grocery shopping. There was always someone with some comment about single mothers, about children who grow up without a father." He asked, "How did you deal with that?" She replied, "I learned to pretend I didn't hear. I learned to lift my chin and move on, because Sophia didn't deserve to carry the weight of others' ignorance." Ethan was clearly moved, his eyes moist. He said, "You are the bravest person I know." She replied, "I'm not brave. I just did what I had to do." Ethan said, turning completely to face her, "Clara, look at me." She met his gaze, vulnerable. He said, "You took an impossible situation and turned it into something beautiful. You raised an incredible child, maintained your dignity, never let bitterness consume you. That's not just bravery, it's heroism." She said, "Sometimes I wonder if I made the right decisions. If Sophia wouldn't be better off with a complete family with stability." Ethan interrupted, "Sophia has the best thing any child can have. She has a mother who loves her more than anything in the world. That's worth more than anything else." Clara felt more tears stream down, but this time they weren't of sadness. She asked, "Why are you like this?" He asked us, "Like what?" She replied, "You always know what to say. You always manage to make me feel like I'm not a failure." Ethan said simply, "Because I see the real you. I see a woman who faced the world alone and won. I see someone who turned pain into love, abandonment into protection." They were very close now, the space between them charged with emotion. She said, "Ethan." He replied, "Yes." She said, "Thank you for listening to me, for not judging me, for making me feel like I can trust someone again." He replied, "I should be thanking you for letting me be a part of your lives, for showing me what really matters." The sun had completely set, leaving the room lit only by the soft glow of the lamps. In the next room, Sophia slept peacefully, protected by two adults who had found in each other something they didn't even know they were looking for. Ethan said quietly, "Clara." She replied, He promised, "I promise I will never let you two go through hardship again, not while I'm here." She said, "You don't have to promise that." He replied, "Yes, I do. Because you have become the most important thing in my life." The confession hung in the air between them, filled with a meaning that neither of them was yet ready to fully explore. But they both knew that something fundamental had changed that night. Between the cups of coffee and the twilight confidences, they had gone from strangers to friends, from friends to something deeper and more indefinable. And for the first time in their lives, neither of them felt alone in the world. A month had passed since that evening of twilight confidences, and the routine at Ethan's house had settled so naturally that it felt as if they had always lived that way. Sophia would wake up excited every day, running to the kitchen where Ethan was already preparing breakfast before heading to work. Clara had found a comfortable rhythm between managing the house, looking for a job, and simply living without the constant pressure of survival. But it was precisely this sense of normality that was beginning to haunt Clara. On that Tuesday morning, she watched from the kitchen window as Ethan played with Sophia in the garden before she went to school. He had come home from work early, as he often did, claiming he wanted to spend more time with them. Sophia shouted, jumping from a small rise in the garden, "Ethan, look how high I can jump!" He replied, running to catch her if needed, but without inhibiting her play. "Be careful, princess," Sophia asked, hanging on his arm. "Can you teach me how to ride a bike this weekend?" He replied, "And, of course, we'll buy you a bike and I'll teach you." She asked, "Really? A bike just for me?" He replied, "Just for you. What color do you want?" She replied, "Pink, with streamers on the handlebars." Clara felt her chest tighten watching the scene. The naturalness with which Ethan assumed the role of a father figure in Sophia's life was both comforting and terrifying. In recent days, Sophia had started referring to Ethan in a different way. No longer just Ethan, but as her special friend. And worse still, Clara had noticed how her daughter eagerly awaited his arrival every day, how she ran to the door when she heard his car, how her little face lit up when he appeared. Sophia asked during lunch, stirring her pasta, "Mommy, what time is Ethan coming home today?" Clara replied, "I don't know, sweetie." "Why don't you eat up, or you'll be late for school?" She said, "It's because I want to show him the drawing I made yesterday. It's of the three of us at the park." Clara swallowed hard. The three of us. Sophia was creating a family fantasy that didn't exist, and Clara knew that she, as a mother, should be setting boundaries. But how do you explain to a 5-year-old that this was temporary, that Ethan wasn't really part of their family? In the afternoon, while Sophia was at school, Clara was alone in the big house, cleaning and organizing things that were already clean and organized. It was her way of trying to feel useful, to justify her presence there. But the truth was she was lost in thoughts that made her increasingly distressed. What was happening to her? How had she allowed her life and Sophia's to become so intertwined with a man they barely knew? How had she let her guard down to the point of feeling at home in someone else's house? Worst of all, it wasn't just Sophia who was getting attached. Clara had also started looking forward to the moments they spent together. The late afternoon conversations, the family dinners, the sense of security she felt when Ethan was around. She was allowing herself to dream of a life that wasn't hers, with a stability that depended on someone else's generosity. When Ethan arrived from work that day, Sophia ran to him as she always did. She shouted, waving a sheet of paper, "Ethan, Ethan, look what I drew for you," he said, crouching to her level. "Let me see, princess." The drawing showed 3 people in a park, a woman, a man, and a child, all holding hands, with big smiles drawn on their faces. Sophia explained proudly, "It's our family at the park. You, me, and Mommy." "Do you like it?" Clara, watching from the kitchen, felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. Ethan said, but Clara noticed a hesitation in his voice. "It's beautiful, Sophia. You draw very well." She asked, "Can I put it on the fridge?" He replied, "Of course." Later, when Sophia was in the bath, Clara approached Ethan in the living room. She said, her voice more serious than he was used to, "We need to talk." He asked, "Of course. What's wrong?" Clara took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. She said, "Ethan, I think Sophia is getting too attached to you." He frowned. He asked, "What do you mean?" She said, "She's starting to see you as a father. She calls you her special friend, waits for you every day, draws the 3 of us as a family. This isn't healthy." Ethan was silent for a moment. He asked, "And you? Do you also think you're getting too attached?" The question caught Clara off guard. She had expected him to deny or downplay the situation, not turn the question back on her. She began, I can't, but couldn't finish. He asked, "Clara, what's really scaring you?" She admitted, "I'm feeling too comfortable here, and that terrifies me, because I've been through this before." He asked, "Through what?" She replied, "Trusting someone, allowing someone to become essential in my life, becoming emotionally dependent on a person who can decide to leave at any moment." Ethan moved closer to her, but maintained a respectful distance. He said, "Clara, I'm not him." Clara felt her eyes well up. "How can you be sure? How can I be sure? You're a good man, Ethan, I know that. But what if one day you get tired of this situation? What if you meet someone you want to marry, have your own children? What if you decide you no longer want the responsibility of caring for a woman with baggage and a child that isn't yours?" he asked. "Do you really think I would do that?" Clara burst out, I don't know, that's what scares me. I don't know because I haven't known you that long. And even if I had, people change, feelings change, and when that happens, it's not just me who will suffer. It's Sophia too." Ethan was silent, processing her words. He finally said, "You're afraid of falling in love with me." The direct statement made Clara take a step back. She said, I didn't say that." He replied, "You didn't have to. It's written in every word you just said." Clara turned away, trying to hide her tears. She said, even if it were true, it wouldn't change anything. I can't let Sophia go through another abandonment. She's too young to understand the difference between temporary love and permanent love. He asked, and what if it's not temporary? She replied, how can you promise that? No one can promise forever, Ethan. They were silent for a long moment. From the bathroom came the sounds of Sophia playing with her plastic ducks. Ethan finally said, okay, what do you want me to do? Clara said, turning to him. I need independence. I need a job, a place to live, a life that is mine and not dependent on your generosity. He said, all right. I can help with that. She asked, how? He replied, I have a friend who owns a restaurant downtown, a serious place, well regarded. He was looking for someone for customer service, a decent salary, business hours, a respectful environment. Clara looked at him, surprised. She asked, would you talk to him for me? He replied, if you want me to. She asked, and it wouldn't be charity, a set-up job? He replied, it would be a recommendation. The rest would be up to you. He would only give you a chance, but you would have to prove your worth. Clara thought for a moment. It was exactly the kind of opportunity she was looking for. Honest work. That would allow her independence. She said, I would like that very much. He said, I'll call him tomorrow. 2 weeks later, Clara was working at the Central Cafe, a cozy restaurant in the heart of the city. The owner, Marcus, was a middle-aged man who had immediately liked her professional demeanor. The work was demanding but rewarding, and for the first time in a long time, Clara felt she was building something on her own merit. Ethan asked during dinner, as had become their habit, how was work today? Clara replied, but there was something different in her tone. Good. I feel more confident every day. Sophia, who was playing with the food on her plate, suddenly looked at her mother. She asked, Mommy, why have you been sad lately? The innocent question caught both Clara and Ethan by surprise. Clara replied, I'm not sad, sweetie. Just a little tired from the new job. Sophia said, but you don't smile like you used to. And you don't talk to Ethan after I go to bed. It was true. Since she had started working, Clara had deliberately created distance between herself and Ethan. She went to her room earlier, avoiding the intimate conversations that had become so important to both of them. Clara vaguely explained, adults sometimes need to think about important things. Later, when Sophia was asleep, Clara prepared for the conversation she knew she needed to have. She said directly, Ethan, we need to move out. He was reading on the sofa and looked up at her. He asked, why? She replied, because I can support myself now. I have a good job. I can rent a small apartment. It's time for us to regain our independence. He asked, are you happy here? She said, that's not the point. He replied, to me, it is. Clara sat in the armchair opposite him, keeping her distance. She said, Ethan, you've done more for us than anyone ever has. I will be eternally grateful. But I can't keep living off your generosity forever. Ethan paused, searching for the right words. It's not generosity, Clara. It's love. The word hung in the air between them. Clara said quietly, you love Sophia as if she were your own daughter. And that scares me because she loves you as if you were her father. He asked, and you? She replied, I can't afford that luxury. He asked, what luxury? She finally admitted, loving you. Because when you leave, I'll have to pick up the pieces again. Not just my own, but Sophia's too. Ethan stood up and walked to the window. He asked, and what if I don't leave? She replied, everyone leaves, Ethan. It's the only certainty I have in life. He asked, did your father leave? She replied, when I was 7. He asked, did Sophia's father leave? She replied, before he even knew she existed. He asked, and that's why you assume I'll leave too? Clara didn't answer, but the tears in her eyes were answer enough. Ethan turned to her. He said, Clara, I understand your fear, I really do, but you're punishing us for crimes other people committed. She said, I'm protecting my daughter. He replied, you're protecting yourself. She said, and what if I am? Don't I have that right? Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. He said, "Of course you do, but what if this time it was different? What if this time the person stayed?" She replied, "I can't bet Sophia's happiness on a what if." He asked, "So what do you want from me? Do you want me to disappear from your lives?" She said, "I want you to let me try to be independent. If, after some time, you still want to be a part of our lives, we can talk about it. But I need to know that I can take care of Sophia on my own before I allow someone to become essential to her." Ethan was silent for a long moment. He finally said, "All right, if that's what you need, I respect that." She replied, "Thank you." He said, "But Clara?" She replied, "Yes." He said, "I'll wait, as long as it takes. Because you two aren't just essential to me, you are my family, and family doesn't give up on each other." Clara felt her heart break a little, but she stuck to her decision. She said, "We'll look for an apartment this weekend." He asked, "Okay, but can I ask for a favor?" She replied, "Depends." He said, "Let me help with the move, and let me continue to be Sophia's friend. I don't need to be a father figure, but I don't want to disappear completely from her life." Clara nodded, not trusting her own voice. That night, she lay in bed knowing she had made the right decision to protect her daughter and herself, but also knowing that she had just given up the best thing that had ever happened in her life. In the next room, Ethan lay awake late, staring at the ceiling, wondering how he had found a perfect family only to lose it to the ghosts of the past. And in her little room, Sophia slept, hugging a drawing of 3 happy people, unaware that her small family was about to fall apart. 3 weeks had passed since Clara and Sophia moved into a small apartment. It was simple, but Clara had felt a surge of pride signing the lease with her own salary from the Central Cafe. But the achievement hadn't filled the void that grew with each passing day. For Ethan, those weeks were the hardest since he had met them. The house had returned to its former silence. The hallways echoed emptily, and the garden where Sophia played seemed lifeless without her laughter. The Saturday visits felt forced. Ethan took Sophia on outings, but there was something artificial about it. Sophia always asked when he was coming home, and the answer never satisfied her. It was on a Saturday that Ethan reached his limit. He had just brought Sophia back from the zoo, and the little girl had fallen asleep in the car. He carried her up to the apartment. Clara asked, taking Sophia in her arms, "How was the outing?" Ethan replied, but his voice sounded tired. She loved the monkeys. Clara noticed the sadness in his eyes. She asked, "Ethan, are you okay?" He said, "Can I come in?" "I need to talk to you." Clara hesitated, but agreed. They put Sophia to bed and sat in the living room. Ethan said directly, "Clara, I can't do this anymore." She asked, "What do you mean?" He replied, "I can't live like this, pretending everything is okay, that I can accept seeing you only once a week." Clara felt her heart race. She said, Ethan said with intensity, "These 3 weeks have been hell. I wake up in an empty house, I work thinking about you, I come home knowing you won't be there. This isn't a life, Clara." She said, "You'll get used to it." He interrupted, "I don't want to get used to it. I don't want a life without you two." Clara looked down at her hands. She said, "I need my independence." Ethan interrupted, "And you got it. You have a job you love, your own apartment. You're raising Sophia on your own. You've achieved your independence." She asked, "Then why are you here?" Ethan took a deep breath. He said, "Because independence doesn't mean being alone forever. It means you get to choose who you share your life with." Clara felt her eyes well up. She said, "My fears." Ethan took her hands. "I understand them. But, Clara, I don't just want to help. I want to be with you. Can we be a family?" The question hung in the air. Clara saw unconditional love in his eyes. She asked, "Are you asking me to marry you?" He replied, "I'm asking you for a chance, for the 3 of us. If you want to keep your apartment, keep it. I just want to know that we are a family." Clara walked to the window. She asked, "And what if it doesn't work out?" Ethan countered. And what if it does? What if Sophia grows up happy? What if you never have to carry the world on your own again? She said, I can't gamble with her happiness. He replied, You're not gambling, you're choosing. Clara closed her eyes, feeling the tears. She said, I'm so scared. He admitted, I'm scared too. Scared of not being a good father, of not making you happy. But I'm more scared of wondering, what if forever? A small voice came from the hallway. She asked, Mommy, why are you crying? Sophia stood at the entrance, rubbing her eyes. Clara said, wiping her tears, Just grown-up talk, sweetie. Sophia looked from her mother to Ethan and her little face lit up. She asked, Ethan, are you sleeping over tonight? The question made Clara's heart break. Ethan replied, I don't know, Princess. Sophia said, I wish you lived with us again. It was more fun when we were a family. Clara crouched down to her daughter's level. She asked, Sophia, what would you think if Ethan became part of our family for real? Sophia's little eyes widened. She asked, Forever? Clara looked at Ethan, who waited with his heart in his hands. She confirmed, Forever. Sophia screamed, running to hug both of them. Yees! We're going to be a real family. Ethan looked at Clara. He asked, Are you sure? Clara took a deep breath, feeling as if she were jumping off a cliff. She said, I'm sure that I want to try. Sophia needs you, and I need you too. Ethan kissed her softly as Sophia applauded. The little girl declared, Now we're a family. 6 months later, life had found a new rhythm. Clara had kept the apartment as a safety net, but she spent most nights at Ethan's house. Her job at the Central Cafe was going well, and Marcus had offered her a promotion. Ethan asked, as they prepared dinner, How was work? Clara replied proudly, Great. Sales are up 20% since I took over as manager. Through the window, they could see Sophia in the garden with her pink bicycle, pedaling confidently. Clara observed, She's growing up so fast. Ethan added, And she's happy. Genuinely happy. It was true. Sophia had blossomed. She was confident at school, made friends, and had stopped asking when people were going to leave. Clara said, Ethan. He replied, She said, Thank you. He asked, For what? She replied, For not giving up on us. Ethan looked at her. He said, I've discovered something these past few months. She asked it, What? He replied, That true love isn't about never being afraid. It's about having courage in spite of the fear. Clara moved closer, wrapping her arms around him. She said for the first time, I love you. He replied, kissing her, I love you too. Sophia shouted from the door, coming in sweaty from the garden, And I love you both. They laughed, opening their arms to include her in the hug. Sophia said, You know what? They asked, We what, Princess? She said, Now I'm sure my family is going to stay together forever. Clara asked, How can you be so sure? She replied, Because you look at each other the way people who really love each other do. Ethan and Clara looked at each other, smiling. That night, after Sophia had fallen asleep, they stood on the porch watching the stars. Clara asked, nestled in his arms, Do you have any regrets? He asked, About what? She replied, About fighting for us. He said, Never. It was the best decision of my life. She asked, And now? He replied, Now we build our family, one day at a time. Without fear, but with a lot of love. Clara smiled, feeling a peace she hadn't experienced in years. She said, I spent so much time being afraid that I almost missed the present. I almost missed you. He replied, But you didn't. We're here. And for the first time, all three of them knew they were exactly where they were supposed to be. Clara had found stability. Ethan had discovered that true bonds were worth more than wealth, and Sophia had gained the certainty of a solid family. Sophia had been enrolled in the best school because she deserved it. Clara had been promoted on merit, and Ethan had discovered that success meant little compared to the love of a family. The unexpected gesture in a simple diner had turned into the greatest blessing of their lives. The future, at last, seemed full of hope. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.